guys, I'm Aussie Insider and you are Benny's lovely little lemon drops, triple dipped in sugar. Please, before we start, hit the like, hit the subscribe, share the video and type a comment because it all feeds the algorithm. Without further ado, let's not get into bashing each other over left and right politics. The fact is, Orrin and Orson came from a black family and they were given to a black family. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll find that both families support BLM. I'm not here to argue with everybody over whether BLM's a good thing or a bad thing. We have a similar movement, the same movement here in Australia, and it involves policing and over-incarceration of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's pretty much the same issue. The boys came from black families and both black families support BLM. End of story, no more argument. What I am here to discuss is whether or not Ryan Dean was unjustly targeted by CPS or DHS. Now, we all heard her say that she has a job and she has money and she has a car and she has a good family, and we all saw her genuine shame and tears during her interviews. But what we're going to do is just have a little deeper look into Ryan Dean's lifestyle and consider why CPS maybe thought the children were not in a good environment. Of course, it's all just speculation, but we were sent a document, or Benny was sent a document that he couldn't open, so he forwarded it to me to see if I could open it. And it is a very interesting look at the lifestyle that Ryan Dean and her baby daddies actually live. And it's through this lens that we understand who has the most to gain by convincing all of us that law enforcement is corrupt. They don't know what they're doing. They're not trying to look for these boys. They're doing something wrong. They're maybe involved in trafficking children. There's a whole bunch of reasons that these particular people or groups of people would want us to believe all of that is the case. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to two other little boys who are loosely involved with this case. I say loosely, you'll understand why as we get into it, but these two little boys literally did lose their lives. They were both murdered. So let me introduce you to 5-year-old Kason Guyton and 3-year-old Major Sutton. Katon's mother was dating an East Side Crips gang member. And Major's mother was dating a West Side Crip member. Now, I'll just run those news segments so that you know the cases that we're talking about and where we're up to in those cases, so that the document I'd like to read to you makes a little bit more sense.
5-year-old Kason Guyton's murder was a case of gang violence that devastated the community back in February 2017. King and Jonathan Knight allegedly shot into the car the boy was riding in with his then 7-year-old brother on their way back from the movies. He and his brother were both hit, but his brother survived. The boyfriend of Guyton's mother was the one driving. Police believe he is an East Side Crips gang member who King and Knight, both West Side Crips members, were actually targeting. At long last, Jeremy King is behind bars.
I went out and asked the public to come forward and help us come to a peaceful resolution of getting Mr. King into custody. And I would just like to say thank you to the public and this community.
Bakersfield police had been looking for King for the past month. Police even spotted him in a car Wednesday, but the known gang member fled and slipped through their fingers. Finally, Thursday night,
the community came through and provided some assistance that was able to give us a location where we were able to generate an area where Mr. King could be located at.
Arrested near South H Street and Hadar Road.
This is not over. This is just one step in the process.
2017, I stood out in the middle of the roadway, and I promised this community that we would put every resource towards solving this homicide. And I discussed my disgust with having to talk to a 7-year-old about being shot.
Little information was released about the murder investigation until December of 2017, when police completed a 10-month investigation into the West Side Crips gang, ending with the arrest of over 30 suspected gang members. Police documents identified who they call the 3 blind mice as primary suspects in Guyton's murder. Of those suspected included 27-year-old Jonathan Knight, who goes by the nickname Lil Mice, 25-year-old Jeremy King, who also goes by Baby Mice, and 25-year-old Skylar Billing, who goes by Tiny Mice.
Information officer will be releasing a list soon because we're going to reach out to the public for the folks who we did not get into custody to at least point us in the right direction or give us some information, or so those folks can come and turn themselves in. We had 36 folks that were on our list, 34 actual locations where we were serving warrant. We had over 100 law enforcement officials involved in this, and that's not counting support staff. We use crime analysts, we use clerks. Just lots of people. This is very resource intensive. We had gotten to a conclusion of where the operation was going. The other thing was we wanted to specifically do this right around this time of year. We want people, I'm hoping, I'm an optimist that, maybe some parents and grandparents will allow their kids to go out and ride their bikes during the holiday season. So I thought this is very timely for the conclusion of the operation.
Both of these cases happened in 2017, a couple of months apart from each other, which is about the same time that Ryan was pregnant with Orson, who is born 4 months after Kason Guyton is murdered, and 5 months before the revenge killing of Major Sutton. This is the environment that little Orrin had been living in, and little Orson was destined to live in. Let's listen to the news reports about Major Sutton's shooting.
And good evening to you. 3 people have been arrested for the murder of 3-year-old Major Sutton, the toddler who died after suspects ambushed a home in central Bakersfield back in November of 2017.
4 months ago, this apartment complex was a crime scene after multiple people rushed inside of this apartment complex, shooting a mother and her 2 sons. That night, 3-year-old Major Sutton died. Following a 4-month investigation, Bakersfield police announced the arrest of 29-year-old Maisha Dale, 19-year-old David Palm, and 21-year-old Tyrone Johnson for the murder of 3-year-old Major Sutton. The murder happened in November of last year on Pershing Street in central Bakersfield. According to police, suspects kicked the doors down in Janice Williams' home and shot her, her unborn baby, and her 2 sons. While Janice and her unborn baby and son King survived, 3-year-old Major Sutton died. Tyrone Johnson, Maisha Dale, and David Palms were all booked on murder and attempted murder charges. In a statement by Police Chief Lau Martin, he says their arrests are the result of a long and difficult investigation, and the department is grateful to the local and federal agencies assisting. Now, these arrests come just 1 week before Kason Guyton's, 5-year-old Kason Guyton's anniversary of the day that he died.
Tyrone Johnson is one of the 2 defendants in the shooting of Major Sutton in Bakersfield. He and David Palms somehow managed to break out of jail at around 1:45 this morning. Palms is back in custody, but hours later, Johnson is still on the run. But Palms didn't get too far. with surveillance video showing his arrest at a Dollar General parking lot in Shafter. But Johnson evaded capture. He's considered armed and dangerous. Court documents say Johnson kicked down the door to Sutton's apartment on Pershing Street before he and Palm sprayed bullets inside, killing 3-year-old Major, wounding his 5-year-old brother and his mother, who was pregnant. Allegedly the victims of a hit by the East Side Crips, targeting a rival gang member who wasn't even at the home. The two had been in custody since 2018, along with Maisha Dale, who was accused of driving the men away after Sutton's family was shot. Now, these two were due back in court in July to see if the trial can begin.
Now, I was able to track down the probable cause affidavit for the murder of Major Sutton, and we'll read that next. So we'll just get into the declaration. On November 10th, 2017, Bakersfield Police Department officers were dispatched to a shooting at redacted address. Upon their arrival, they determined that suspects forced entry to the apartment and shot redacted and her 2 sons. Redacted, who was still pregnant, suffered moderate wounds to her torso and foot. Her unborn child was unharmed. One of the boys was shot in his left hand. The other boy suffered a gunshot wound to his chest. He was pronounced deceased shortly thereafter. Redacted stated after hearing a loud noise from the living room area, she observed a black male, thin-build, average height, wearing a black hooded sweatshirt and blue jeans, standing near her bedroom doorway and pointing a gun at her. The suspect fired numerous times as Redacted attempted to shield her children. She turned away as the shooting started. After the shooting ceased, she heard the sound of a vehicle leaving the area. Redacted is pregnant and living with Redacted, a documented Westside Crip gang member. It is suspected that the suspects in this murder were seeking to shoot him and or his associates who frequently loiter in the complex parking lot at this location. He and 2 associates had been in the complex parking lot just prior to the shooting. However, they left the scene to visit a nearby store and were not present for the shooting. A distinctive right-footed Vans outsole shoe print was found on the apartment front door and was consistent with the door being forced open with a kick. 3 .40 caliber bullet casings were located in the hallway where Redacted advised the subject had been standing. Video evidence located shows a vehicle leaving the area of the murder and travelling eastbound on California Ave just after the murder. A downstairs neighbour advised she heard the sound of 2 people running up the stairs prior to the sound of a door being kicked, followed by gunshots and the sound of 2 people running downstairs. In another homicide, which occurred on March the 2nd, 3 suspects forced entry to a locked apartment and fatally shot a man while he was in bed with his girlfriend and 2 children. Information developed in that case led to the identification of Tyrone Johnson and David Palms as 2 of the suspects in that case. Due to the similarities in the 2 homicides, Tyrone Johnson and David Palms were identified as possible suspects in this homicide. Parole records show Tyrone Johnson removed his parole ankle monitor 2 days prior to this murder. A confidential informant, a citizen informant, and numerous anonymous tips provided by the public indicated that this murder was committed by Tyrone Johnson and David Palms and blank blank. Tyrone Johnson and David Palms are documented Eastside Crip gang members. Blank is a member of the Bloods criminal street gang. On November 2017, Tyrone Johnson was located by officers in the 2300 block of Oregon Street and arrested for parole violation. The outsoles of the Vans shoes he was wearing at the time of his arrest appeared to match the outsole markings on the door at the scene of the homicide and were subsequent laboratory comparison testing of the outsole print of the victim's front door to the right shoe seized from Tyrone Johnson's jail property resulted in a match of size, brand, and tread pattern, but without specific individualization to Tyrone's shoe. Tyrone was released several days later. On November 19th, a traffic enforcement stop was conducted on a vehicle driven by Tyrone. Blank and Maisha Dale, the vehicle owner, were also in the vehicle. Dale has children with the Johnsons' older brother, Blank. Dale's vehicle was consistent with the vehicle seen leaving the area of the murder. A search of the vehicle was conducted pursuant to parole and probation terms, and a Smith & Wesson was located in Dale's purse inside the vehicle. Tyrone and Blank were arrested and placed in the rear of a patrol vehicle containing a hidden recording device. While there, Tyrone told Blank, "They know, bro, that I kicked the door with the right. That's why they're coming to talk. That's why they're coming to talk." During subsequent interviews, Blank claimed possession of the pistol, saying he purchased it the prior day from an unknown Hispanic male near Baker Street. Tyrone Johnson and Dale denied any knowledge or involvement in Blank's murder. Tyrone Johnson and Blank provided contradicting alibis. Dale stated she was at her own home near South Oswald Street, but this was later contradicted by her cell phone's location data. Dale's vehicle was seized for processing. During the processing of Dale's vehicle, David Palm's left palm print was located on the exterior rear passenger side of the vehicle. Dale claimed during an interview that she did not know Palms and stated he had never been in her vehicle. Dale's vehicle was also driven through the intersection of Union Avenue and California Avenue while in police possession. The resultant video was compared to video of the suspect vehicle from the night of the murder, and the vehicles are identical in appearance. The Smith & Wesson was submitted to the California Department of Justice Bureau of Forensic Services for ballistic analysis and comparison to casings seized from the scene of the murder. The laboratory concluded that the Smith & Wesson fired the casings located at the scene. A KRCL report concluded that Tyrone Johnson's and Maisha Dale's DNA were present on the firearm. Officers reviewed numerous jail phone calls placed by Tyrone while he was in custody. During those calls, he tells one female that he got my brother in this shit, you know. He tells another female during several jail calls that he's going to take a life sentence, threatens to confess if she does not visit him, and states, "I pulled that trigger and I did that." He also references that female being shot in January 2017 as motivation for his actions, saying she made him do it. During a call to another female, Tyrone says he wished she knew his phone's password so she could delete its contents, but he would not provide it over the recorded line. On December 11th, Blank advised she had viewed a photograph of David Palms on Facebook and recognized him as the person who shot her. A photographic lineup was subsequently conducted and she selected Palms in the lineup as the person who shot her. The Facebook photograph she had viewed was one depicting both Palms and Tyrone. During the interview on December 12th, Blank advised he observed 3 male subjects wearing hooded sweatshirts walking from the area of 9th Street in the direction of his apartment when he was returning from the store. He circled the block and, as a safety precaution, and upon his return discovered the shooting. His statement corroborates information there were 3 suspects. During a forensic analysis of Maisha Dale's cellular telephone, I located evidence of a romantic relationship between her and Tyrone. There are also text messages from both Tyrone and Blank that they were going to be with Maisha Dale after 5 p.m. on the day of the homicide. Records obtained from her cellular company show a cellular phone was utilising a cell tower at 505 Union Avenue at least an hour prior to the murder, and one at 1415 Truxton Avenue at the time of the murder. Her cellular phone then utilises numerous cell towers in East Bakersfield. Her records show presence in the area of the murder and movement when she claims she was at home. Records obtained for Tyrone's phone account show a gap of cell tower information within an hour before and an hour after the murder. This is consistent with his cellular telephone being turned off during that time frame. It is this same time frame that Dale's phone is utilising cellular towers in the area of the homicide. Blank's cellular phone did not contain location data but did show a gap in phone calls and other activity prior to the murder, also consistent with his phone being turned off. The following significant calls were intercepted during wiretap operation targeting Tyrone and David Palms. Number 1. Tyrone asks, redacted, if the detectives want to talk to him about the same one or hours. Redacted replies that it is the same one, which we believe refers to the murder of redacted, in which redacted is believed to be involved. Hours is likely to reference this murder, in which redacted is not suspected to be involved. Redacted had not been interviewed regarding any additional murders at that time. Number 2. Redacted, Tyrone Johnson's girlfriend, tells redacted's girlfriend that she would take care of redacted because he took care of Tyrone, a suspected reference to redacted claiming possession of the firearm used in this murder. Number 3. After a follow-up interview with Maisha Dale by detectives, she called Tyrone and asked him of the substance of the interview. Tyrone asked her if she lied for him, and she said she did. Number 4. When I contacted Tyrone's alleged alibi, redacted, to arrange an interview, she told Tyrone, and he told her, that she didn't need to tell us anything. She has repeatedly failed to appear for scheduled interviews. Several other calls indicate all contacts with people related to these cases are reporting directly to Tyrone and redacted prior to and after interviews, as well as any knowledge developed. A bullet retrieved from blank hand is a different caliber, .38 or .357, than the other .40 caliber semi-automatic weapon confirmed to have been used in this offence. This shows there were 2 used and therefore 2 shooters. In a 2018 interview, Blank advised that she received a call from Tyrone the night of the murder at an unknown time. Tyrone asked her to pick him up from 1000 Water Street, a known hangout for the suspects. Blank picked up Tyrone Johnson and David Palms from that location and took them to her apartment, where they stayed the night. While there, Palms asked to borrow her phone to look at Facebook. He then called to Tyrone to apparently show him something. When he returned to her bedroom, he asked if she had cable or the news stations, which she did not. The following morning, she learned of the murder. This investigation shows sufficient probable cause to believe that Tyrone, David, and Maisha are responsible for the murder of and the attempted murder of blank and blank. Evidence indicates Tyrone forced open the door by kicking it, and that David Palm and Tyrone shot their victims in the bedroom. Blank acted as a lookout outside of the apartment. Maisha Dale was present in a vehicle while the suspects committed the murder and attempted murders, and knowingly allowed her vehicle to be used as a means of escape from the area after the crimes. These acts were conducted in furtherance of and for the benefit of the East Side Crips. The other homicide mentioned in this document involves a very near fatal shooting of a 6-month-old baby, just 1 week after the shooting of Kason and his brother. Here's the news reports for that case.
Rochelle, please tell me that 18-year-old Delano Williams was shot and killed, a young woman in bed next to him injured, and it all happened with the couple's 6-month-old baby lying right between them. Police say 3 male suspects kicked in their door and went straight for the bedroom, indicating a planned and targeted attack on specific victims. Sergeant Ryan Croker tells me it has gang-related written all over it. A 5-year-old was killed and a 7-year-old wounded by gunfire just 1 week before this latest incident.
Gang members oftentimes don't care who they're shooting, why they're shooting them, and the specific reasons why. And innocent people are getting caught in the crossfire. And I know sometimes that's an overused term, but this brings it home for us. And this should bring it home to the community that we have two innocent boys who were shot. And now we have another incident where a 6-month-old was very, very close to being murdered.
Family and friends will be saying their goodbyes to a man who was reportedly gunned down in his apartment while he slept. The BPD says DeLeon Williams was with his girlfriend in bed and 2 young children inside the apartment on Q Street when they say someone kicked in the door and opened fire. Williams died from his injuries. That funeral set for today at the Southside Seventh Adventist Church.
Now, this is just a wild guess, but I wonder if perhaps CPS got wind of Crippy Daddies being part of these baby killing gangs. That might be a good reason that they weren't given any choice in the adoption. Anyway, back to the document that was sent to Benny. This 265-page document is just one of many federal criminal complaints filed by the FBI during Operation Blind Mice. We won't be reading the entire document, but it does outline how the investigators uncovered the additional Williams murder that Johnson and Dale are suspected of committing. This is the murder of just 1 week after Kason is murdered. Its relationship to the missing Cal City toddlers can be seen within the first 5 pages, being the very reason we found it very interesting indeed. So we start with the FBI agent who is submitting the complaint to the court. He is an investigator or law enforcement officer of the United States within the meaning of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 2510.7, which is essentially wiretapping and surveillance. He goes on to describe that he has provided training regarding United States narcotics law, drug identification, financial investigations, which Benny often talks about, RICO investigations, enterprise drug organizations, and the techniques which have been successfully used in the past for dismantling them. He's also received instruction on large and small scale street gangs and the methods they utilize in furtherance of their criminal activity. So essentially, he is experienced in dealing with gangs. He's received training and experience identifying illegal drugs and learn common trends and concealment methods of narcotics traffickers, physical indicators of narcotics trafficking, and identification of human behavioural indicators of narcotics traffickers. It's just giving you a picture of his expertise in this particular field. Now we're looking at the murders of these children, yet the FBI is looking at the narcotics picture, and this particular indictment is indeed addressing one particular person they believe to be a trafficker. I'm not going to say the names of those drugs because we don't want this video to be kicked off YouTube. Okay, so he has interfaced with other defendants, informants and witnesses who have personal knowledge of narcotics trafficking organisations, etc., etc. In addition to his employment with the FBI, he's worked with both federal, local and state law enforcement agencies, to include the DEA, the ATF, the HSI, the Bakersfield Police Department, the Kern County Sheriff's Office and the California Highway Patrol. So what this is saying is that he has been involved in this particular area for quite some time, and that working with these different agencies has allowed him to learn from the local level what's going on in that county with respect to units focused on violent gang activities. So he is a coordinator for the Kern County Violent Crimes Gang Task Force. I want you to remember that name because it's significant. And we'll come to it again after we finish talking about this FBI agent's experience. So he's dealt with a lot of different gang members, including Mexican Mafia, Serena gangs, Crips, criminal street gangs, and outlaw motorcycle gangs. I know that gangs will often use a hierarchy to assert the direction of the gang. These gangs will often use violence to establish a specific area to operate the enterprise, and in that area and elsewhere. Members of the gang will sell narcotics, commit robberies, burglaries, shootings, and murders to fund the furtherance of the gang. All of these are actually very significant to the case that we're looking at with the Cal City boys, and we'll come into that shortly. I know that certain gangs have to pay for the right to sell drugs in a certain area, and in some instances this is in the form of taxes to higher ranking gang members. I've learned that Crips in Bakersfield and Kern County will conduct home burglaries in an attempt to obtain firearms, jewellery, money and other valuable items. He goes on to say that he's become familiar with the methods used by individuals involved in criminal street gangs and in drug trafficking organisations to conduct various criminal activities, including drug manufacture and distribution, money laundering and firearms offences, among others. He's also become familiar with the methods used by such individuals to avoid detection by law enforcement, including the frequent use of multiple cellular telephones, including those that are described to in the names of other persons in this document he's referring to, prepaid cellular telephones, counter-surveillance techniques, coded and ambiguous language, multiple vehicles, vehicles equipped with concealed compartments, and false identities. Now, false identities has come up in these missing boys in Cal City. If you've been following the case along, and not just one channel or a channel, but listening to all the channels, you will be familiar with exactly who we're referring to when we put a spotlight on these false identities and what the possible purpose is of producing those false identities. So he goes on to explain his experience with wire intercept communications, etc., and how that comes about. He's become particularly familiar with methods employed by large narcotics organisations and criminal street gangs, and the sophisticated tactics that they routinely use to attempt to thwart investigation of their narcotics organisations, such as the frequent changing of cell phones, the use of prepaid calling cards, counter-surveillance, elaborately planned smuggling schemes tied to legitimate businesses, the use of false or fictitious identities, and coded communications and conversations, including coded language related to narcotics trafficking and firearms. The very large portion of the 265 pages of this document is going into these details. How they found a certain cell phone to be a prepaid or passed around between the gang members. How they found their counter surveillance techniques. How they found how they uncovered elaborately planned smuggling schemes, etc. So that's a very large portion of this document, being the reason I'm not going to read it. It's quite tedious, and it involves people that are not entirely related to this. At this stage, I don't think they are. The FBI and the BPD are jointly investigating the case. He has worked closely with BPD Detective Robert Pear during this investigation. Where have we heard Detective Robert Pear before? In fact, where we've heard it before is Sergeant Pear. We didn't know that he was a detective. We heard Sergeant Pear introduce himself as the public relations officer for BPD. And it's very clever. He did not disclose that he is a detective, although that doesn't seem very unusual that he would be a detective. It goes on. Detective Pear, who at this point had been with the BPD for 15 years. This document is dated 2017, so we're talking now 19 years he's been with the BPD. He's currently a detective assigned to the robbery homicide detail. Robbery being burglary, being probably also kidnapping. Things that you steal is sometimes humans. He's previously been assigned to the BPD Special Enforcement Unit as a gang investigator. Interesting. Detective Pear is in the BPD Special Enforcement Unit as a gang investigator. He's also a task force officer with the Federal Bureau of Investigations. He's an FBI officer. Surprise, surprise, folks. As a member of the Kern County Violent Crime Gang Task Force. FBI Detective Pear. Isn't that an interesting title? So, we don't just have a handover to the BPD because that's where the boys' families originated from. We have a handover to the task force officer with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, who is a member of the Kern County Violent Crime Gang Task Force. We've got two extremely experienced gang investigators involved in two missing toddlers. remember in the previous news reports we heard that this particular investigation, Operation Blind Mice, netted around 35 Crip gang members. It wasn't specifically said whether they were West Side, East Side, Spoonie G's or Country Boy Crips. It just basically said it was a Crip gang operation. Now, Benny and I have discussed having a live stream about this revelation to see what you guys think about this revelation. The revelation that Detective Pear and his FBI counterpart are actually involved in these two little missing boys. So let's dig in a little deeper and see what else we can find out about FBI Detective Pear. So he's been trained in gangs, including gang culture, gang changing trends, internal structure and crimes. He he liaises with BPD and Kern County Sheriff Department gang units to keep his level of knowledge up to date. He regularly consults with other officers, detectives, deputies and agents of the BPD, Kern County Sheriff's Department, Bureau of Prisons, FBI and DEA. Yes. He seems a little bit overqualified for looking for two missing toddlers. So he's had experience with testifying in the Kern County Superior Court. He instructs and gives lectures on the topics. He's been involved in many investigations, including homicide, weapons violations and criminal street gang related offences. He's patrolled the territories in Bakersfield and Kern County that are known gang strongholds. Very interesting. So, he's familiar with street gang culture, methods, terms, expressions, paraphernalia associated with gang activities, structure, politics, and primary gang crimes such as murder, assault with a deadly weapon, weapon possession, burglary, witness intimidation, robbery, and drug trafficking. Witness intimidation. There's another key word that comes up in this case. There certainly has been some witness intimidation regarding Wanda, who provided witness testimony to corroborate the West's stories. And we know that there's been other types of witness intimidation regarding neighbours who had CCTV cameras or who may or may not have seen things. So, very interesting. Detective Pear's also had some experience in an investigatory role regarding narcotics. He's previously received clandestine laboratory safety certification through the California Department of Justice. That is interesting too. He was assigned to the BPD Major Narcotics Violators Unit in both an undercover and enforcement role. This explains to us why he introduced himself to the media as the public relations liaison officer. He's gone undercover. He's absolutely undercover in this case. I'm not going to read all of the particular types of narcotics he's experienced with, so we don't get this kicked off. Now, there's one more thing I want to cover, and that is, what does a gang member look like? Physically, we know what they look like. They wear their flags and throw up their little hand signs and talk a lot of homie sort of lingo. But this affidavit is extremely instructional in what a gang member actually looks like on paper. So here we see, through my training, experience and consultation with other law enforcement officers, I also believe the following. A. Individuals involved in criminal street gangs utilize various means and instruments to recruit prospective members, communicate with established associates, and to promote and further their criminal activities. These means include those that are considered traditional, such as graffiti, tagging, hand signs, open intimidation, etc., as well as those more modern, including, but not limited to, cellular smartphones, social networking websites, and rap music, which can be distributed on a much larger scale on sites such as YouTube and SoundCloud. Individuals involved in criminal street gangs often possess photographs or digital images depicting 1. Themselves and fellow gang members posing and displaying gang hand signs. 2. Gang members or associates posing with weapons. 3. Gang members or associates posing beside vehicles. 4. Gang members or associates posing at known gang-affiliated locations and hangouts. And 5. Gang members and associates displaying tattoos of gang affiliation. Often these images are displayed on the internet, websites, and kept for long periods of time on digital media, cell phones, and computers. So G is very interesting because this is what I'm going to go into next. In order for them to become a part of the gang, they actually do have to commit a variety of crimes on behalf of the gang or at the direction of the gang. These crimes are committed by the individual gang member to bolster their status within the gang and elevate their status within the gang. This is behaviour commonly referred to as putting in work. Gang members' ability to commit criminal acts, more specifically violent criminal acts, is a cornerstone of the gang subculture and lifestyle. So, this is important to note. What this means is that the part I'm going to go to next is going to demonstrate how putting in work comes across in paperwork to police force or to us as members of the public. Just before we venture off to that topic, I would just point out that example H here, description H, is probably something that CPS is well aware of. If the FBI is, if the BPD is, if general law enforcement are aware of these things, then you can bet your bottom dollar that CPS and the family courts are also aware of these points. And that is, gang members are often the victims of rival gang members' assaults and retaliatory attacks. Consequently, gang members will often arm themselves or have access to firearms for defensive purposes against rival gang members. In addition to possessing these firearms for defensive purposes, Gang members also possess firearms to commit assaults on rival gang members, as well as commit crimes against citizens. These firearms are used by gang members in a multitude of crimes, including robberies, carjackings, home invasions, shootings, and homicides. I would imagine that that's a particularly damning curriculum vitae to walk into the family court with. Anyway, on to what do one of these gang members look like to us, to we the public. On the way there, I just spotted number 4, basis for facts contained in this affidavit, and it's describing the way that they have established the facts here, and look what they use. Sorry, I can't get it to highlight. They use public records. So we're going to do that ourselves at some point here. So this paragraph is showing us the criminal records for just one of the target suspects that this document covers. He's got assault with a deadly weapon, juvenile arrest for second-degree burglary, juvenile arrest for second-degree burglary, juvenile arrest for stealing stolen property, burglary and conspiracy, arrest for participation in a criminal street gang, possession or purchase of cocaine base. It goes on. It's just such a huge list. And what we see here is a progression from juvenile arrests through to adult arrests. This person's a particularly senior member of the gang, so it moves on to time served in jail. Okay, this person, the FBI believes to be a middle-ranking member. So he doesn't have, a whole page of arrests and felonies to his name, but he's certainly got a substantial number of them. So he has assault with a deadly weapon with force, possible GBI, inflicting corporal injury on a spouse, receiving stolen property, owning a prohibited firearm, felon, he's a felon addict in possession of a firearm, carrying a loaded firearm, gang member, obstruction, participating in a street gang, and so on. Again, you see that over the years that escalates. Actually, this is only showing us 2 years. There's a lot of activity in just 2 years. And this character here is an upper ranking member. So we're seeing the same sort of thing, carrying weapons, domestic battery, cocaine-based sales, disorderly conduct, possession of controlled substance while armed, arrest for prior felon in possession of a firearm, arrest for false identification, arrest for controlled substance, warrant arrest for possession of narcotics and sexual battery, arrest for gang participation, arrest for maintaining a residence for narcotic sales. Again, driving, they seem to like this whole driving if they haven't got a license. I guess going and getting a driver's license involves proving who you are, having an identity on record. So I guess that's why there's a lot of driving offences by members of gangs that don't want to get their license or their vehicle plates. This goes on and on. So we started in the 90s, we're up to the early 2000s, and it goes on and on and on. Obviously it moves into going to jail, eventually going to jail. It really does surprise me from an Australian perspective how many offences these people have to commit before they actually do go to jail. Okay, so using public records, just as the FBI did, we're going to have a look and see if we can associate any criminal or gang activity with certain family members involved with the missing Cal City boys. So let's begin with Trezell. And I did a little search before I pulled this record up, just to check that Trezell West is the only Trezell West in Cal City and Bakersfield, and he absolutely is the only record that's returned, so we know we've got the right record with him. We also know that he hasn't given any false identification at all to law enforcement, because there is only one record. And I point that out because a little bit later we see that that's not the case with other people. So let's hit the criminal or traffic offences and see what we come up with. And here we see there's absolutely no digital records whatsoever associated with Trezell. Now we know this isn't a mistake or public records not showing us everything, because we look at some other records a little bit later and we see that it absolutely is showing at least some records associated with criminal or traffic arrests, criminal or traffic records. Now we'll have a look at Jacqueline's records, and again I did a little search to make sure that this is the only Jacqueline, and it absolutely is. And here we see again there are no digital records for Jacqueline either. So now we'll have a look at Trezell's mother, Wanda West. And here again we see she has no criminal records, not even a traffic fine. Next we have a look at Wanda's husband, Philip West. And again we see he has no criminal records, not even a traffic fine. Now let's have a look at Trezell's brother, Josiah. Does he have any criminal records? Nope, he's also clean. And of course, the name on the tip of everybody's tongue, Jamal Watkins. It looks like he does have some records. Let's have a look what those records are. So here it looks like he has numerous traffic violations. They do not appear to be related to his identification of himself or his vehicle. They appear to be signalling when turning a corner, and I think one of those looks like snapped by a speeding camera. Certainly nothing here that looks criminal in nature. I would point out though that if he's in such a high position of power and he has such an immense control over legal matters, then how is he not able to get himself out of these offences, out of court, out of fines, out of trouble with these offences? You know, if he was the type of person people are painting him out to be, wouldn't he just rung him up and said, like, quash that or expunge that from my record? I personally don't think he, even if he has that power, he's certainly not using it because he does have records. Nothing that rises to criminal though. So I ended up thinking twice about showing any of the public records for Bio Family because I don't want to bring any backlash on Benny or his channel, So if you want to go and have a look at those particular records, he's already shown a lot of them in previous videos, so go and have a rifle through the library and see what you can find in previous videos. The points, I guess, that we're making are that it most likely is Ryan Dean's affiliation with Crips members, Crips gang members, that caused CPS to take the children off her. It's probably that reason too, that other family members weren't able to intervene in the adoption process. And it's very interesting that Sergeant Pear is not who we thought he was, and that he is involved in looking up family ties in Bakersfield as a gang investigator. So I think we've pretty much established that Trezell and Jacqueline and none of the West or Watkins families have anything to do with gangs. And previous videos on this channel and other channels have firmly established that Bio family has a lot of affiliation with gangs. So that's pretty much all there is to show. You can look up that document that I was reading from on the internet. It's available on the ABC 23 website. There's a lot more in there that explains a lot more about how gangs operate on the street and how they hide their weapons at each other's houses and the roles that the women in the gangs play. It's a very extensive document if you're up for the read. Otherwise, we're pretty much done here. All that's left now is, I guess, Benny and I will do a live stream a little bit later, just to get some feedback from you guys about what you think with Sergeant Pear's undercover work and involvement with the case. So thanks for listening.